Well, then there's a question, what do you want to call that thing above it and behind it? Right. He could say the first principle in nature, that would make it clearer, wouldn't it? Or in a process of nature. Right? As the next statement says, Heraclitus says that all things at some time become fire. All things can be consumed by fire, return, and come out of fire. We would say the same thing through the bursting of the sun and all of the planets are nothing other than spinning fireballs out of the sun at some point, and then it will likely to be caved in at some future time, and therefore everything is generated out of fire and will return to it. There is an alteration, change back and forth into destructive processes which go on now in this way, now that, continuing without end. That's there, isn't it? Still in nature, isn't it? He's still in nature, isn't it? Right? Still in the processes of nature. It is logically impossible to suppose that the same thing is and is not as something Heraclitus said. Well, okay. All right. Okay. Now there are three other statements. They're long paragraphs. All right. Deals with the idea of the theory of forms. We're led to it by means of Heraclitus' argument concerning truth. He holds that whatever is perceived by the senses is in the state of flux, and if you say that, if there's any kind of knowledge, there must be something behind it that can account for the flux. That's true, but does he tell us what forms there are behind it?
Is that the Platonic theory of forms?
Well, just a theory of forms. This is before Plato. It's 30 years before Socrates was born. So while that's true, does he link it to it? Does he link it to the theory of forms? All right. All right. Where something of like is a friend, the opposite is an enemy, other thing, the opposite is friends. All right. Then he quotes Heraclitus, blames the poet who wrote. All right. So he's just quoting from a poet at that point, is he not? Heraclitus thinks that this view came from this poet. Right, so. Okay.
So he stays on one level.
And you can take the last sentence now to punctuate Heraclitus is difficult.
He gets into the grammar.
It's a question even whether there's a difficulty with it, but okay. Now, what percentage would you say of the ideas that we were covering tonight does Heraclitus cover?
20%.
He doesn't deal with the most important one, it seems like.
Louder, please.
He doesn't deal with the most important one. Not seems like he doesn't deal with the idea that everything is one.
No.
Or that there's a beam of light.
So the theology he doesn't have.
Doesn't have the logos.
Doesn't have the logos.
Doesn't have the rational.
Doesn't have the rational. Doesn't have intelligence. Doesn't have understanding. Doesn't have the idea of participation in understanding. Huh? Let's go back, right? Does he have any of this?
No.
And if these are important, and if a student failed to include them on the paper, what would you do? How about only the divine nature has real understanding? Is that an important idea?
Yeah.
Human nature has no real understanding, only the divine does, and therefore there's by participation that we gain that. Since only the divine nature has
He
it.
doesn't understand it because he doesn't know how to punctuate that sentence.
That's right. That's very important, by the way.
If he knew how to punctuate, if he understood it, he could probably punctuate that sentence.
Yeah.
Although, if I knew how to understand it, I'd probably.
But he still stays at the level of nature all the way through. He never goes above it.
Well, let's take that English problem or that grammatical problem and take a look at it in a minute, all right? All right. Does he also have a view of mankind? Is he continually opposing one view against the many? Does he bring that up in his statements?
No.
Then he doesn't have that tension between the two that plays a major role in his thinking? So therefore that's missing as well? Huh. How about man's character as his guardian deity? Ah. And man's soul is like a beam of light? The hidden harmony.
No.
See, you have to know the intelligence by which all things are steered through all things, right?
He thinks everything is what?
Thinking is common to all. How about the idea of law? Was that significant? Idea of law and nature. Behind all nature is the logos. That same principle which is common to all can be found in man and law. Significant? Fight for your law as if for your own city. Right.
I don't know anything about this stuff, but I've heard of the chaos theory, just heard of it. Is this at all similar to that behind all these things that seem inharmonious, that there's a harmony?
That's what he's saying, isn't
But
it?
I mean, that with the chaos theory or whatever.
Especially the whatever. Yes, if you're talking about chaos theory is a way of talking about that behind chaos there's a higher degree of order. That's right.
And that's very similar to
That's
this,
very
or
true.
is
Yes.
there differences in it, or?
There might be differences to it, but this is so sparse. We only have 124 quotes, and there are actually only 30 quotes, and only 6 deal with the idea of hidden harmony. It'd be difficult to set up, therefore, a direct comparison between chaos
What kind of
theory.
people, were they mathematicians or
This is no.
what? Oh, no, I meant.
We're talking
like
about
people-
500 BC.
But I'm saying the chaos theories, that.
Sprung out of mathematics.
Math?
Yeah, math and theoretical physics.
On physics.
Yeah,
Oh.
yeah. Especially at the University of Santa Cruz. All right, okay, how about this? Give him a grade for this, or did he miss this page?
Missed that one.
So- So where does he then focus? What does he focus on?
There you go. Oh, not even.
Not even in naturalist is not the one, right?
Doesn't see the oneness.
Not even oneness. He drops out all oneness. And the transformations he does have.
You could 5%.
This is where he is, isn't
There
it?
you go.
So
He-
from 20 to 10%.
Processes.
Big fat F.
How could this guy be Plato's disciple? I don't get it. Aristotle.
Well, no. See, that's one of the words you have to learn to use. He may have been sitting in the back sleeping.
So,
No. See, he went to the academy. He was a member of the academy, and he claimed he never did understand that great lecture on the good and the one.
you said
Yeah.
you wrote that?
Yes. Yeah.
Where?
Too bad.
He wrote it.
Poor guy.
That's what he said. That's what he said. Yes. Yeah. So now look here. Now let's go back now. Look here. I'm not sure about, shall we collect the pages and find out how he did, or do you think we can all agree without collecting the papers what kind of a grade he received?
Big fat
Or,
That's what I gave him.
Yeah.
I'd say see me after class.
therefore, we're going back to the real problem, which is this one. You see, how should we teach philosophy? Now, I think, see, if you use Aristotle to understand Aristotle, and if you're now taking Aristotle's view of Heraclitus and using that as a basis for understanding, then you have a D or an F understanding of Heraclitus. But the biggest problem is the theory we mentioned last time. And let me restate it. There is an idea that there are